Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Big welcome to you, listener, here for said business chats. And there are just so many reasons to be listening to this one in particular. My guest is the incredibly warm Rachel Smith, and she's building multiple businesses, which really just lights me up as I struggle to imagine a day when I'm not building multiple things at the same time. It just hits, it gets all the neurons firing. She's widely known as the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board for freelancers, but as you'll hear, she has plenty more engaging business feathers in her cap. In the sharing of her business building story, where we really get into both the practical and the personal journey of it all, you're going to hear about following a childhood interest into a lifelong career and not being afraid to keep following its pivots. Working through the retrospective build of an accidental business as it grows. So many of us have been there. Some handy insights into pitching your writing to publications. How to effectively work with your team of freelancers if that's a business model you have taken on. You're going to love this. And how it differs to on-books staff members. Experimenting in your small business marketing to sometimes amusing outcomes. The role your confidence growth plays in your business approach. Monetizing multiple business streams at different stages, and the impact of podcasting in the marketing of your business and in nurturing new parts of yourself in the process. If you and we've been connected here for a while, you'll know that this last point is of particular interest to me. And through Rachel's sharing, I think you'll also feel really inspired about the potential of a branded podcast if it's something you're kicking around. If it is something you have been thinking about and want to explore more on or get a bit of support, please do get in touch with me on LinkedIn or emails or socials. There's a million ways to reach me. If you Google my name, you'll find me, as branded podcast strategy is my consultancy expertise. And I would love to work with you to make it happen for your business growth. Listener, business growth is equal parts professional and personal. We're here for it all, to inspire you to feel seen, supported, and inspired to grow the business of your unique dream. So let's get into the chat. I'm here with Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer who's freelanced for over 20 years. She's founder of rachelslist.com.au, a popular jobs board and community for other writers and creatives. As well as splitting her time between writing for editors, content chiefs, clients, and running Rachel's List, she also hosts a popular podcast, The Content Bite, with fellow journo Lynn Testoni. The pod recently extended into a conference for writers, the Content Bite Summit, with a follow-up event already in the works. And some sideline fun Rachel facts for you. If you search the internet, you'll find a sex book she wrote called Get Lucky, based on the most popular questions received to a now defunct website called Reality Chick. But out of that came another website called Letter to My Ex, a very popular site for broken-hearted humans to submit anonymous letters to their ex that I just spent an extraordinary amount of time reading. Rachel never set out to run two businesses, technically 3 with the podcast, maybe 4 with the letters, but somehow that's where she has ended up. Writing is her passion, but so is connecting people and helping freelancers find work and build a business they're happy with. And we absolutely love building businesses we're happy with. So can't wait to hear all about your story of building yours, Rachel. Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Oh my God, that is so hilarious. 4 businesses. That makes me want to have a stiff drink and a good lie down.
It did make me want to throw up a little bit.
What, reading the letters?
Oh, that too. They were quite gut-wrenching. But that is a lot to split your attention on. But I also hugely relate to following the passion into a business. So I can see how you got there.
Yeah, I definitely go down rabbit holes and then abandon those rabbit holes and go down other rabbit holes. But yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting. Reality Chick and Letter to My Ex feels like a complete other lifetime now. And only one of them is still live, so...
Oh, well, I'm glad that's the one that is live because, yes, like I said, hugely enjoyable. And I think me and the listener are both in for quite the story about how you've been building your businesses. But before we get into that, I would love to know, how do you think your son would describe you?
Gosh, probably annoying and prone to talking to everybody, every stranger that I come across, pretty much. Because he will always say, Mum, why do you talk to everybody? Why do you have to say hello to strangers all the time? And I said, well, it's my job. That's my excuse. But yeah, I know that annoys him about me.
Oh, that's brilliant. Look, I think the ability to talk to everybody is such an undervalued skill in business, not just in journalism, not just in writing, not just in storytelling, but in business. So many of us have to get over that inability to just go up and be like, hello, I'm this person. Who are you and what do you do? And can we be friends? Because it can lead to a lot of great things.
Yeah, I don't think you can be scared of talking to people if you're going into business for yourself. There's so many things you can't be scared of. I mean, you can be scared of it in the beginning, but you have to get over all of these things. And talking to people, putting yourself out there, pitching your businesses, having an elevator pitch, all of that is part of the melting pot and you've got to just dive in. It's really hard.
Oh, I mean, amen. You are speaking my language. But before freelancing, before Rachel's List, before the Content Bite podcast and summit, right back, who were you?
I always wanted to be a writer. On the Rachel's List blog, it talks about how when I was a kid, I carted around this little suitcase of paper and pens so I could stop and write stories. And I think my first ever published piece of work was when I was 5, and it was a poem about fairies that made it into the school paper. And my grandma kept it and said, this is a sign that you are going to be a writer. And as it happens, she was right. But yeah, I think I always felt really lucky that I always knew what I wanted to do and I had a path in my head that was mapped out very, very, very early. And people around me, even, I have friends now who are still floundering in their careers, in their 40s, late 40s, don't really know what they want to do or aren't happy with what they've chosen to do. So I think that's a huge gift if you know early what you love and what you can leverage and what skills you can build on. So I set out to become a journalist, and back in the day, the big, course that you had to get into to become a journalist and go to Bathurst was mass communications in Bathurst. And I think the TER back then was 95 and I completely failed. I got 85. And so I ended up doing English literature at Macquarie University and it was just brilliant. I just fanged around for 3 years and read amazing books in the sun and, talked to other writers. And I kind of knocked on the door of their mass comm department and said, will you let me in and do feature writing? And they said, okay, even though I wasn't part of that course. So I learned all about magazine feature writing. I wrote for every magazine I could find on campus. I worked for the radio station on campus and I pitched my little heart out and got published for free, never got paid, but got published in travel magazines and other little titles as well before I graduated. So I was sort of on my way. And then my first job was at a kids' computer magazine. And then I went to London and worked on magazines there and was a sub and just madly in love with magazines. But when I got back to Australia, I worked on a big website called Scape, and a heap of those people, there was like videographers and all kinds of people that it had a dating section. And I wrote a lot of dating and relationship stories and a lot of lifestyle stories. And then everybody got made redundant from there. And they all just scattered. And we had this awesome team in Melbourne and Sydney, and we basically all got frog marched out at 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. And I was picked up by one of the collaborators in that project, which happened to be Network 10. And so I used to take the scripts from the TV writers and turn them into stories for their newsletters. So I was doing email marketing, a very early form of it for Network 10. And then that entire department got retrenched. So that was the start. I was just like, right, I'm going to freelance, even though the entire market was awash with writers and people. It was kind of the .com bust time. And I didn't know how to get clients. I didn't know how to build a business. I didn't know how to get work or what the fuck I was doing, and I just kind of dove in and learned, I suppose.
I love to hear about your pitching adventures. I have so much admiration for people who, quote unquote, just pitch their heart out over and over again and just get into that habit of it. I must labor myself intensively over every pitch. Actually, shortly before we jumped on this podcast, I was pitching an article to Smart Company, and it's a follow-up because I pitched a week ago and they didn't get back to me. I was like, okay, I'm going to change my subject and I'm going to go again here and I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going. So I always have so much admiration to hear about how much effort and focus it takes to be able to get a pitch off the ground. It's impressive.
Yeah, you know what? It's really hard if you don't know the editor and you're going in cold. But if you know the magazine back to front and you can sort of get a sense of where it might fit and what might work for the editor, the kinds of cover lines that they might do or the headlines that they might do if it's a web outlet or something like that, you've got a better chance of doing it. Also, I used to do the 2 strong pitches, 1 shit pitch in my pitch. So I would pitch 3 at once, and invariably they'd always want the shit one. And it was like, why? The other 2 are so good. So pitching, it's a funny game, and there's a little bit of an art to it, but you do get to the point when you're an established writer and you've been doing it for so long and you've got so many bylines behind you that a pitch is essentially okay, so this is a couple of weeks ago, right? I pitched an editor that I work with. And I think I wrote, hey, I've just read a story in the New York Times about rucking. Do you reckon it's got legs for your mag? And she went, yes. And I got the story. So, a one-line pitch becomes your thing after a while because editors trust you. They know that you're going to do, you're going to pull a great yarn out of something or find the right experts or, you'll just do it right. And so they don't even think about asking for a synopsis or anything. They just let you run with it. And that's awesome when you get to that stage, for sure.
I mean, I almost want to go on a tangent with this because I think so many of us are in such a hurry with business in particular to see the kind of growth that we want to achieve, and just that longevity of trying things, building relationships, showing up in people's inboxes over and over again, connecting with their content on LinkedIn, starting to build those relationships into that space and practice yourself as well, your voice, your elevator pitch, whatever it is. It does just take time, and we're just all in such a hurry to hit those goals, to be that business owner that feels really comfortable about their bank account and their forecasting and what's coming in, that we miss all of that. We want to so badly miss all of that stuff in the middle, but geez, it's important. And as you mentioned, you didn't know where to start on freelancing. You didn't know how to get business. You didn't know how to find clients, and you were fighting with a lot of people. So when did Rachel's List start to seed for you as an idea, and what did it look like in those early days?
So basically, when I started freelancing, and I was sort of reaching out to friends and people that I knew and said, do you have anything for me, like even just a small project? And a few people said, yep, you can do this. You can do this brochure, or here's a story that you can write, or whatever. So I would take those little bits. And then I had a friend who was working at a magazine at what is now Media, but it was ACP back then. Then it became Bauer. Oh my God, so many name changes. Anyway, she said, do you want to come and do some feature writing for us? So I went in-house there, and I sort of bounced around a few magazines there. And then I was on a job share with 2 other journalists, and we'd never met before, but we kept doing this handover where I would kind of didn't finish a story. So I'd say, hey, Alex, here's what needs to be done on this story, because she was on the next day. And so she would finish it off, or it would go to Brenda, our other job share person. And so we sort of worked in tandem, the 3 of us. And then one day we thought, this is ridiculous. Let's go out. Let's meet each other. So we went out and had dumplings. This is the famous dumplings story, which I've told over and over. So sorry if your listeners have heard it before.
I love any story about dumplings.
Oh my God, any dumplings. Yeah. So it was fun. We got on really, really well. We did it a few more times. Other freelancers were saying, hey, I want to come to your dumpling days, or I want to come to that lunch or whatever. So this lunch kind of grew, and then it became dinner, and then it became drinks in a pub, and it was like 30 people. And I was sort of the unofficial keeper of the list of people who wanted to get together. These freelancers, freelance writers mainly, who wanted to get together. And so people would call it Rachel's List, and they would tell other freelancers and say, hey, you've got to get onto Rachel's List. She puts on these drinks things or whatever, and it's great. You can talk shop and feel like you're not so alone writing in the garage, etc. So this list became, it was 3 people, then it was 10, and then it was 30, and then it became 800. And there was actually email marketing back then, but I really didn't know about it or think to go and look for something like MailChimp or whatever. So I was getting emails from editors who knew that I had this huge list of freelance journalists and writers, and they would say, can you put this job out to your list? So it became like a jobs list where editors would give me jobs, I'd put it out to the list, and they would fill the job within minutes a lot of the time, because anyone could just go for it who got the email. And that just became bigger and bigger, and so many people were posting jobs to it, and it became really busy. And I thought, right, this needs to be monetized. And so that was the first part. I actually polled the 800 people who were on it, and I said, I'm at the crossroads. Would anyone be interested if this became a website and if I monetized it? And they were overwhelmingly like, yes, please don't stop doing it. So it became from like an Outlook list that was just unwieldy and annoying to the first website. And I had a partner at that time, Leo Wiles, and we grew the business through 2 different versions of Rachel's List. And the model changed, kind of evolved over time and kept changing. And then I bought Leo out, so I run the business myself, just with my sort of freelance team. And we then rebranded again into what it is now. So it's like the 3rd iteration, I think, the Rachel's List that you see now, which is huge. It's a jobs board for, you know, small businesses, big businesses, academics, blue chips, all kinds of businesses post on there to find writers, social media people, journalists, editors, proofreaders, digital marketers, podcast producers, like all kinds of creatives are on the list, but it's very much the core is still writers of all kinds. But then we have a really kind of thriving community of people who are members of Rachel's List, who are the job seekers. So it's like connecting the 2 groups, and I'm sort of the conduit between them.
That's fantastic. As with many accidental businesses, of which yes. I think so many of us find ourselves in, once you start building, I guess there's that element of going back and fixing things. And you mentioned this is the 3rd iteration, but you know, that process of we learn, we evolve, we learn, we evolve, we change things. What has that experience been like for you?
Oh my God. I think this could be an entire like week-long episode, because I'm such a nerd. I'm really techie, but also I really rely on other people to do things that I can't do. And I'm also really realistic about what I can't do and what I want to learn and what I do not want to learn ever or know about. So I think that's a really good lesson, and it's something that we only learn as we go along in business. So the first site was solely a WordPress site, and there were aspects to that I really wanted to do and tried to do that, you know, basically tanked. Like there was a water cooler where we had lots of PR members in the beginning, and I thought it would be great to have PRs who had a directory on there where they could talk about who their clients were and everything. But it completely tanked, because what I didn't think about is that PRs are constantly losing clients, other PRs are picking up those clients, and you wouldn't necessarily want to tell people that you'd lost that client. You know, it's all a little bit of a grey area. So it didn't go very well, and we abandoned that idea and just made it the jobs board. And then it became a blog, and it became a shop and all of that sort of stuff. The podcast came later. But when it became bigger, because we ended up having about 5,000 people register, and our developer was like, if it gets too big on WordPress, you're really going to need to go to a custom build. And that's when the shit really hits the fan. Like when you really need to, you really need to have people that you trust building it. And we're lucky that we did, but things go wrong, you know, when you're building a custom build. And also we needed to have WordPress still part of the website. So our shop and our blog are still WordPress, but they're married into a bigger custom build. And, you know, things go wrong until you get to that stable, calm water where everything's working, the functionality is all worked out and all of that sort of stuff. So we had full change management documents. My husband, who is in IT, helped wrangle a lot of the dramas in the early years. And we were on the phone at like midnight to the developers, and I'm trying to manage members who, you know, so if the website went down for any reason and we had to get it back up, the stress involved in that, because there might be jobs coming in, there might be people who'd posted a job. And so we definitely had, not a lot, but we had a few hairy times when we were relaunching into a new site. And then there are just stupid decisions you make where you're like, right, we're going to rebrand and we're going to completely relaunch the entire website with all this new functionality, and it's going to happen on this date, and you publicize the date and everything, not realizing that that's actually your family holiday, and you're going to get to this amazing place on the beach, and you and your husband will be sitting there swearing at each other while this site basically he has to cut over the DNS. I have to test all the functionality, and your kid is there on the iPad for 3 days straight, and the holiday is completely bloody ruined. So everyone's been in that situation, I'm sure.
There's just so many things that you don't realize need to be done until you start doing the one thing. And it's like, I certainly don't want to say that to scare anybody at all. But I think we've all had that experience where you go, okay, great. I want to rebrand. I'll take my podcast, for example, this podcast, for example. Great. I want to rebrand. Excellent. So now I have a choice. Do I just continue with where I am from the visual rebrand, or do I go back and do I replace all of the artwork that I've done before? So that was me in May, re-uploading 80 different episode titles.
Oh my God.
And redoing them. And then you're loading them onto the website, and then you're doing all of those elements. And yeah, I think it's just all part of it that without that action, you can't quite create the information that you need to be able to know all of the steps you're going to take, whether it's that micro task that's growing your business or just the business as a whole. Like, you can never plan for all of the shit you're going to have to do, but you just got to start doing something anyway. So you might as well go, cool, let's just take 2 steps and then let's just see what big pile of turd we make for ourselves and we will just get through it.
I know, you're right. And every little iteration or change that you make, like changing your branding and having to do 80 tiles or whatever, you need to plan it because, if you're talking about putting your prices up, you need to think, well, we need to have a massive list of where that price appears and where it needs to be changed, whether it's all through the email marketing, it's through your automations, it's through, every page on the website that it might be buried in, it might be in part of your e-commerce area. You just don't know, and you're bound to miss one. So everything, we're such good planners now at Rachel's List, and we've kind of evolved into really, really rock solid systems, but it's taken a long time to get there and to learn all of that stuff. And I've had help in helping me get to that point, for sure.
And that's all part of the step, isn't it? You start and then you keep going, you add people in, and it gets us there. That's actually, there's 2 things I want to talk to you about. One, you've just brought up there, which is taking on team members. And so, expanding your capability to be able to run your 7,000 businesses that you've accidentally found yourself in. And part of that comes with, outsourcing and finding support. How has that experience been for you? What has worked? What hasn't in that space?
It's really interesting because I have had quite a few team members over the years, and in the past sort of 2 or 3 years, I've had a really strong team that have stuck around. And I think that's a combination of we work really well together, everybody is remote, and also I've become a much more hands-off person. Like there's this kind of like sense of holding on and thinking I can do it all. I want to do it all. I'm the only one who can do it. I'm the only one who can do it in the right way. But there's that feeling where you trust your team enough to let go and to let them run the business. It's a huge moment. And I only really had that moment last year, basically because I'm an idiot and very bad at delegating. I'm much better now. But I had that moment and I could actually go to Tuscany for 2 weeks and let my team run the show, and I didn't have to really talk to them at all, and they were absolutely brilliant. They're brilliant anyway, but I think getting to the point where you can say, I don't really need to do that, even if it's not done in the way that I would possibly do it, it's fine for someone else to do that. And there's such a freedom in actually doing that. It's amazing. So I've got 2 VAs. One does a lot of kind of behind the scenes social media for me. So stuff that you are constantly putting out there in your marketing, and she will do lots of batch scheduling, which we use Buffer for that. And then I've got another VA who looks after the inbox and handles a lot of the draft newsletters for me. And then I check stuff before they go out. She also handles a lot of membership queries, membership stuff that happens, and pretty much anything to do with systems, automation, spreadsheeting, finding data, research, that sort of thing. Then I have another amazing freelancer who is a real Jill of all trades. Her name's Claire Chow, and she calls herself the clarifier because she is. She kind of comes in and clarifies stuff and, is just amazing. We always have a laugh about her actual role in the business because she's a real talk me off a ledge type person, but also someone that you can bounce ideas off. And I think that's really, really important. I think you had an episode, was it with Alexandra from Big Smoke Media? And she talked about having that advisory board. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. Oh my God, I've kind of got that unofficial loose advisory board around me with amazing people who I can ring and say, what do you think of this? Or is this a really shit idea? Or how do I manage this scary situation with maybe a job poster or a sponsor or something like that? And all of that is just so invaluable to have all those people. So to have a really good team that you trust and then to have this unofficial advisory board around you, I think really helps you grow and helps you get that confidence to grow as well.
I don't suppose you'd ever consider treating me to a cup of tea? Hear me out. If you love the show, you've probably heard me talk about how much of a labour of love it is creating it. And I do love it. And I really love to hear about how it's supporting you and have big dreams for bringing you more content more often so we can keep growing our businesses together. But the reality is, as an independent podcaster, I bring you this content for free. So if you love the show and the content I create for you, perhaps you'd consider buying me a cuppa to show your support. There's a link in our show notes and in the info about the pod section that says support the show by buying me a cuppa. And that link will take you to the official Buy Me a Coffee website. If you haven't heard of it before, it's a fully legit third-party donation platform for creators where you can make a small donation, the cost of taking me out for a cuppa, because I don't drink coffee, via all the expected types of payment options. Or just head to buymeacoffee.com/unemployedpod. I appreciate you, amazing listener. Now let's get back into the chat. I'm interested in when you do start to build your business and you need to take on those people that are in there and they're helping you build and you kind of go through that stage. If you haven't come from a space where you were kind of pushed into a leadership space, so, you had a few people reporting in, if you sort of operated more like a specialist in employment and, worked amongst a team, but as a specialist in that team as opposed to leading other people, I'm really interested in what that journey is like to then all of a sudden find yourself responsible for other humans in terms of their professional development and also paying for their salaries on top of that, because I have a lot of respect for the position of managers, having been a terrible one for numbers of years to those people who reported into me, and then finally working out how to be a good one. So I guess my question to you is, what has your experience been like learning to step into a role of manager for another human, but also like within your own business, the whole other kettle of fish?
Yeah, I guess I am sort of managing a team, but they're not a salaried team because they're not full-time. They all work freelance and they all have other clients. So my situation is probably, not unlike a lot of small businesses out there who have freelancers who plug the gaps for many other clients. So I think that some things that I've had to learn, well, not learn so much, but how do I put this? I think it's really important when your team is a freelance team that doesn't belong solely to you, like they're not your staff. They are your staff, but they're not sort of on staff, as it were, that you're really respectful of that. So I'm respectful of the time. We're really, specific about the time that they're on Rachel's list and the times that they're not available. And so I try not to contact them at other times unless I absolutely really need to. And also, you have to have trust when you're working with a remote team. And I think that can be really hard for a lot of managers. They want that, they're used to that bum on a seat or whatever, but I've never had it because I've always worked remotely. And it actually makes perfect sense to me that someone else might be remote and that I huddle with them on Slack or we do a Zoom or I pick up the phone or whatever. So yeah, I just have to trust that whatever the brief is or whatever their task load is, that they are getting to it. And if it comes out that, I discover that something hasn't been done or there's a pattern of behaviour where something hasn't been done, you do have to address it, and that can be really hard. As a manager, you have to confront those situations, and I find that difficult, but I will still do it because you've got to do it to get back on track or determine if that person is still the right fit for your team and that sort of thing. Does that answer the question?
It does answer the question. And I really love talking and delving a little bit more into the freelancer model. I think it's such a fantastic model for small businesses to grow their team, but also to support other people in the growth of their own small business too, as freelancing is.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a really unique model. I think sometimes businesses will take on a team of freelancers and won't feel completely confident to say that in market as well, in terms of their positioning and their marketing. They sort of, we're a small team of 5 and, we do amazing work. But it's like, no, when you get freelancers, you get the best of the best on your projects and on your work and on your team, because those people like to work on different projects as well. And they've chosen to work with you. So I do just think it's worth stopping down if anyone is considering, how do I bring on team members? I don't feel like I'm ready or need to have someone on as a salaried employee with, all of the responsibilities that carries. Maybe I'm not at that stage, or it's just not the right model for me. What are my options? Embrace the freelancer model. Promote the freelancer model. Promote that you work with great freelancers who have extensive careers, because it's a selling point. It's not a secret.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that we are always trying to educate job posters about. The market is absolutely swimming in amazing, talented people who were top of their game, in perm roles, and left for whatever reason, because they wanted a better work-life balance or they were pushed out, but they had all these incredible skills, So you can just cherry pick the people that you need for a certain point in time to help grow your business, or help you with a campaign, or write some copy for your website, or whatever it is. Create an email funnel that's going to convert. All of those things that are very specific niche skills that you might not want to learn or have time to learn because you're running your business. And the smartest business owners will look at freelancers and go, right, I just need that person for a specific period of time, and it's going to be way more cost effective than putting a bum on a seat.
You've just blown my mind with hiring a freelancer for an email sequence setup. I never thought of it. Fantastic. Written it down. We'll be in touch. Email marketing, not my jam. So
this is the whole other thing, isn't it, about what we want to learn and what we really don't want to learn. And there's this kind of temptation to try and learn all the things.
Talking about learning all the things. There's one thing that you touched on there, which is, getting yourself out there in market and getting help with it. That much of that is the email sequence, much of that is the social media scheduling. All of those things are key marketing initiatives to grow your business. And what has worked for you in the growth of Rachel's List, in your own profile, in all of the things that you've been doing? What are you loving about your marketing? And feel free to tell me a few stuff ups as well, because I always enjoy. I've made a million of them.
I'll tell you, the thing about having your own business is it's a real kind of experimental ground, isn't it? Like, we all experiment, we all try things. And I find that aspect of it really fun, whether it's tweaking your email marketing, the kind of tone that you're putting out there, or we recently experimented with the Content Bite Summit, where we did more storytelling type email marketing. And it was amazing. Like, the response to that and the ticket sales that came from that, it didn't come naturally to me and Lynn, because we're both journalists and we were more comfortable doing kind of how-to emails or what to expect type emails. But once we actually started, getting really vulnerable and sharing the core things that had changed our business, or when we invested in ourselves and that sort of thing, people really sat up and started taking notice and thinking, wow, yeah, this is something that I want to invest in for my own business. So that's one thing. That's one just little experiment that I've done recently. But I have done lots of marketing campaigns because things go slow in jobs boards. Sometimes you're swimming with jobs, and sometimes it's a little bit slow at certain times of the year when people have lost budget, or it's Christmas or whatever. So we always try and do fun campaigns to engage the job posters and try and bring them back. But one time, it was Easter, I remember this, really, really, really hot. And we decided, right, the best thing that we're going to do is we're going to get post packs and fill them chockers to the brim with little Easter eggs, and then get a printed card, that was about offering them a free job post, or it was some kind of special deal or discount. And then when they open the post pack, all the eggs are just going to flood out, right? But it was so hot, we didn't think about what would happen at the other end. Like, would there just be a massive melted chocolate flooding out onto people's desks? So it's things like that. You're just like, oh shit, you know. And even now I'm about to do a Christmas campaign where I've had cookies done and I've had a beautiful card printed, and it's all about, you know, have a cookie on us and have a free job post over the silly season. Thanks for supporting us during 2023. And I had them all ready to go. And then you go to the post office and they said, well, look, you're sending a Christmas card in an envelope with a cookie in it, and basically it's fine, but it's going to go through a machine that's probably going to chomp the cookie to smithereens. So when it gets to the other side, it will just be shit, basically. And so those little things that you just don't know. But I was so indebted to the lady to tell me that. She was like, you need post packs. So that campaign that, you know, we'd budgeted X for suddenly became double or whatever. So there's all those little marketing failures, I suppose. But yeah, I think your question was what actually works for growing the business is basically I had a really loyal audience to start with. A lot of journalists, and that became a lot of copywriters and a lot of content specialists, and the word of mouth with those people, I'm indebted to them. It's been phenomenal. It has grown Rachel's List and put the name out there in countless places. I'm still shocked when somebody actually will come up to me and say, oh, you're the Rachel's List, and they've heard of it. You know, I've had really random business people who are not in my space at all know of Rachel's List, which is awesome. So word of mouth is the first thing. The second thing that's really helped is starting the podcast. I really was too busy to do that. And Lynn Testoni, my co-host, is such a go-getter and so amazing. And she really bullied me into it and said, we're doing it. And it's been incredible. I just never realised how powerful podcasting was for your marketing until we actually did it. And the third thing is I do a massive newsletter called The Wrap Up, which goes to all our subscribers. So yeah, it goes to about over 4,500 people every Friday. And that's been really amazing too. The feedback I get from that is amazing, and I get loads of subscribers from that as well. And that's just giving people information about the content world, the writing world, the freelancing world, interesting links that I have found funny or useful. And then I sprinkle in a little bit of Rachel's Listy stuff, and I might put in the podcast episode that we've done that week, or I might do a mention of the summit if we were doing something like that. So it's a little bit of my own content marketing type stuff, but mainly it's just this useful thing, sharing other people's work in our space. And yeah, that's really helped.
So it sounds like nurturing your community and your members has been a really big part of your journey in that space, finding new ways to nurture them. Have you had any of the somewhat negative aspects of running and nurturing a membership?
Well, yes, I think everybody who has a membership or a subscription would have those stories.
Oh, we don't. We just love an email that drops in and I am unhappy with this and you must fix it right now.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of people don't realise there's another person on the other end of those emails, like someone who pretty much works tirelessly to provide as good a customer service experience as they can. And so people can be really mean. It's so interesting though, because I think in some of my notes to you, I was mentioning I would love a support group for people who have memberships. And actually, in fact, I do know a few people who have memberships, and sometimes we'll just send each other like a quick one-liner like, oh my God, this just happened, just so we can blow off a bit of steam or whatever. Because there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there. And I think once they've ranted and shot off their email to you, they just forget that they've said that stuff. And I've had people say terrible things to me, like, I am leaving because my membership, I was never told that it was a recurring membership when actually you were told multiple times. And I'm leaving because you just made it click over again and I just feel betrayed or whatever it is, even if you refund them immediately. Yeah, it was funny because we had Beck Derrington from Source Bottle on the podcast recently, and she's just an absolute legend and such a trooper and such a great resource. Anyone who needs sources for stories should check out Source Bottle. And she did something on LinkedIn recently, which I found so funny because it really resonated with me. She wrote, I promise not to be an asshole policy, which was aimed at members who are basically assholes. And but yeah, I think the more your business grows and the more confidence you get, the more you think, well, actually, I'm not taking that. Or actually, if you're going to speak to me like that, you're going to be taken off the membership and that sort of thing. So you start to become braver about making those decisions rather than leaving assholes in your community who just don't deserve to be there.
I love that. And look, if you haven't already checked it out, probably go and have a look and see if there's a subreddit for, we could call it like asshole membership queries or something to that effect.
God,
I don't know
yes.
if you're allowed to say that, but I bet you there is a community there just waiting to have some vent time about some of this. And if there's, can you tell I'm a little bit obsessed with Reddit at the moment? As I was saying to you before, I'm exploring Reddit marketing right now, and I just love that environment, and I love the tonality of that environment and what you can learn culturally and market insight wise from that environment. It's just fantastic.
I weekly lose hours in Reddit. Yeah, it's amazing. But it's also very good for, as you say, voice of customer and things like that. So a great stomping ground for copywriters, for conversion copywriters, as an aside.
Absolutely. I just do not drop in there as a brand and be like, oh, you've put a skincare inquiry. I think I know something that could help you. We're here as my skincare. No. You will be torn to shreds.
There's a big bullshit radar in Reddit.
Absolutely, which I'm so here for, by the way. I want to touch back on the podcast. Now, you talked about that as a key part of your, or has become a key part of your content strategy and your engagement strategy. And I'm pretty naturally very inclined to the world of podcasts. It is my sole job basically at this stage, is either creating one or creating ones for others and talking about them and or learning about them.
Yes.
So very big, high level interest in this. But when you decided, okay, we're going to do this, Lynn, you, me together, we're going to do it. And Lynn started driving some of that, and you got into the chair, you got into the microphone. What was the early doors experience like for you versus what the experience is like now?
You could probably tell if you went like wound the clock back and listened to our early episodes, because I mean, they're not exactly a dog's breakfast, but they're pretty close. We started originally with an idea that we were going to do 10-minute episodes, and they were going to be these useful episodes that basically covered questions that we were constantly asked, that I was constantly asked at Rachel's List, freelancers who, you know, needed help finding clients or needed help quoting the right rate for the work that they were doing, marketing themselves, just so many issues that freelancers have in trying to establish their business and get a cash flow happening and, you know, and grow. So we did 10-minute episodes that did really, really well, and they were great. And then we started to do slightly longer ones, but we didn't have a plan. So we sort of really flew by the seat of our pants a little bit. And then we started to get guests on, and that basically moved us more into having a strategy about each episode, creating a structure around that. We're really scripted, as you would know, because you've been on the podcast, and you know that we script it. But it's also quite rough. We kind of go off on tangents, you know, we go off piste a lot, but the script is there to sort of bring us back and to make sure that the finished product is something that's of real use to people. Like every episode we want to be, you know, something that people are going, oh, damn, I'm driving and I just wish I could write that down, because there's got to be little nuggets of gold sprinkled throughout the episode so that people can learn something and come away feeling like they could apply that to their business. So that's how it's sort of evolved in the past 3 or 4 years.
How do you think it has helped you grow in terms of your presence, your voice, your ability to express an idea?
That's interesting, I suppose. I think one of the biggest things that writers need, it's one of the biggest things that you have to have in order to be a successful writer, is curiosity. And the thing that the podcast allows me to do, which is so incredible, is talk to these amazing people. And I hate the term pick my brain. I'm always saying, if someone emails me and says, I want to pick your brain, I immediately get the icks, you know, like I hate it. But it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of seeing how people work. It's a little bit of how do they run their business and what decisions have they made that have brought them from A to B, and what tools do they use that have, you know, really helped them become more efficient or saved them money or time. I'm fascinated by all of that. And in my own freelance writing work, I do a lot of stories around businesses in other industries. I love to see how other business owners operate and the kinds of decisions that they make, the kinds of things that they do. It's all fascinating to me. And so the podcast is really like a curiosity playground for me in a lot of ways, because I get to talk to amazing people that I might not otherwise meet, I suppose, unless I was at networking events constantly or in those groups constantly. And yeah, so that's been really interesting, I think. Although I hate listening back to the episodes because I really don't want to listen to my voice, which I think is a thing for so many podcasters. I guess it's made me more okay with going on other people's podcasts, which I never wanted to do before, because I think I'm quite shy in a lot of ways, and I get very nervous. Like I think I said to you in my email that I hate sounding like a dickhead on other people's podcasts. It's like my number one. It's my number one like pet hate, right? But maybe it's made me feel like it's actually not so scary to put yourself out there. Yeah. Because I think when you're the face of a business, but you're a shy person, it's so hard to reconcile those two things. And I've really struggled with that. But the podcast has helped me because I'm out there all the time. I'm out there every week interviewing other people with Lynn. So you can't help it, can you?
No, you absolutely cannot. And it is a fantastic podcast. And I can completely relate to the journey of whatever comes out in those first few episodes and how it evolves from there as you find your voice. And, you know, I mean, you touch on some incredibly important points there for podcasting generally, just for anyone who wants to start a podcast from a creator-led environment, but more specifically what you've done as what is fundamentally a branded podcast. It's a podcast with a business purpose as well, to serve your business community and to grow your business community and to build more awareness of the things that you're doing by providing value. Having a plan for that and having a measure of success for that and something to stick towards, because, you know, of all the content aspects that you can take on into your business, podcasting is probably the sexiest, but it's also probably the most work.
Yeah.
But it has the highest rewards, as most things definitely do. So I really love that you touch on that, having a plan. And it's so normal for so many people getting in the space to start being like, I really just want to have chats about this, and then going, hang on a minute, I need to get more focused. I'm starting to narrow it down. Okay, I've got to go back and rewrite that plan now. So fundamentally it's for an audience and it can have fantastic business returns, but you just got to keep going and find your voice. And it is an excellent podcast, which I'll make sure to link in the show notes.
Oh, thank you.
I love pods. You know this.
Yeah.
I love them. More pods for the better. Pods for the win.
I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with them. But you know what? Compared to Lynn, I don't listen to as many as she does. I don't have the time to kind of listen. I prefer to read. So I'm more likely to go to a podcast and read the transcript.
That's such an interesting insight, actually, because, yeah, it's really important to have both of those aspects, I think, available. I naturally listen to podcasts like crazy amounts. Ones I hate, ones I love, because I'm constantly learning about the industry, as well as being a podcaster. And what I find is I can't podcast while I'm doing nothing.
Yep.
Now, so this is the thing. So when I'm reading, I'm doing nothing else but reading. I'm resting and I'm reading. But when I'm podcasting, I have to either be cleaning the house, going for a walk, going for a drive, you know, doing something else. So yeah, I think this is why I've always had a really hard time sticking with audiobooks as well, because I'm always doing something else. I'm sort of like, oh shit, I'm lost. Like, too much of a story, bring me back to a conversation. But yeah, it's an interesting one to think about for your audience. I want to almost bring us back to the top of this podcast when we started talking about all of your business streams. And I want to bring us into, you know, all the monetization priorities that come with that. So me, my listener, everybody, we love to think about how we're monetizing things and how the financial journey is for this. And for you in particular, you have your freelancing work that you do and you maintain as an excellent writer. You have Rachel's List that you are monetizing from memberships through to job listers coming on board as well. You have the Content Bite Summit, a new revenue stream, but, you know, a fantastic event that also needs to have tickets sold to. And you have the podcast, which you're monetizing as well. So having sponsors come on board and support you. How do you focus and how do you know which revenue stream to place your focus on to make the best of your forecast potential?
Oh my God. That is such an enormous question.
I am a curious human. How do you know which one to monetize first?
That's actually a really terrifying question as well, because I'm a words person. I'm not a numbers person. Well, Rachel's List, let's start there. Originally, it was free, completely free, and then it became monetized for the job posters. Then it became monetized for a membership. And if I had my time again, which I've said publicly on other podcasts, I would do a different model, because it is very economically priced and it's difficult to go up from there. And so I sort of struggle with that, but the model is working pretty well. And also it feeds into all the other stuff. So we get a lot of people signing up and it's like a volume thing really for that to work. But we also have a shop where we've done lots of resources and I love all of that. I love collaborating with great designers to do templates and stuff like that. We've done masterclasses, which go on to become digital products. So all of that has its own little, is ticking over in the background as another little part of our income stream. And with the podcast and Rachel's List and the Content Bite Summit, we have one main sponsor, which is Rounded, who are fantastic. We love the team there. Big shout out to Ollie Garside, who's just a legend. He originally approached me and we had a coffee. He wanted to do some stuff with Rachel's List, and then it ended up that he wanted to sponsor the Content Bite. And so he's sponsored the Content Bite for a couple of years now, and then he ended up becoming a main sponsor on the summit and also on Rachel's List as well. He's got category exclusivity on Rachel's List as well. So I've only really had to manage one big sponsor, but then it's still a lot. And I sort of juggle that with Lynn, because Rachel's List is an interesting one. It's a separate entity from the Content Bite. It's a separate business, but they're sort of married together. And the summit, again, is a separate business that's sort of owned by me and Lynn, but it sort of feeds into Rachel's List as well. So, yeah. And then I have to juggle, obviously, my own work. So I sort of have to batch a lot of my work. I have to be really clear about my time. I have diaries, and I use a fantastic online diary called To Do, where I have everything that I'm working on, everything I have to do for the day, and then I have a paper diary as well. And so my time is really scheduled, and I still have a to-do list that never ends, basically.
I like that. I'm always trying to find the best way to prioritize the to-do list, because there's the BAU stuff, you're constantly working on, you're constantly maintaining, and then supporting a fantastic sponsor or client or anybody, and then thinking, okay, goodness, all right, let's look 6 months from now. What's happening? Do I need to be out pitching now? Do I need to be out creating a marketing campaign for this now? It's a huge balance. So I always have my hat off to anybody who is monetizing multiple streams and multiple businesses, because it's a lot to juggle.
And also it hasn't happened all at once. So that's probably a good part of it. I always had my freelance work, and I was always, kind of making a really good living from that. And then Rachel's List was sort of a tiny little side hustle, and then it grew and grew like a runaway train. And I was like the driver trying to learn how to drive the train. And then everything else exploded from there. So I sort of have been able to do things in stages, and I think that's really important.
Oh, absolutely true. I always think of learning to run a business, or learning what your business is while you're running it, likened to if you've ever learned to drive a manual car, and just that process of bunny hopping.
Yeah.
Where you're like, you're driving, but you ain't driving.
Yeah.
You're just kind of hopping along.
Yeah.
It's just, shit's a bit wild.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
So where do you hope to see your business plurals, all of your businesses grow to over the coming years?
That's a really interesting one. I think that I've done so many things that I wanted to do with Rachel's List, but there's still loads more things that I want to do. I want to do more ebooks, because I think that a lot of people want to consume, information that way. Lynn and I have talked so much about doing some kind of book based on the podcast. So that's been a little idea that we're ticking over. The conference was essentially a tiny, tiny little nugget of an idea that we came up with, I reckon, in November or December. And by January, February, we were planning it on her dining room table with a heap of Post-it notes. Like, it was that quick a turnaround for that idea to sort of gain steam. And also I was very much I'm one and done with this. I'm doing it once. It's a massive job. It's a full-time job alongside all the other full-time jobs that, all the other business like kind of things that I have to do. So that's it. I'm doing it once and that's the end of it. And then it was just so awesome. It was so amazing. And the feedback was so amazing that I thought, I really have to just see where this is going. That's another runaway train that I have to follow. Like, I constantly feel like my career, I'm not steering it. I'm almost just being dragged down these paths into, trying these things or doing interesting things that I perhaps never wanted to do, but they end up becoming these incredible things. And I just want to follow that and see where that goes. So we are planning a Summit 2.0 at the moment. And I'm really excited about that, because putting a conference together is just incredible fun, and finding the right people and thinking about the program and what you want to do. Amazing, amazing fun, and super stressful as well, and financially terrifying. But yeah, so I want to do that. I want to build that up. I want to do lots more resources for Rachel's List. I'd like Rachel's List to become known as the most awesome place to find journalists, copywriters, content specialists in Australia, because I really believe that it is. I believe that it's just a brilliant tool for small businesses, all kinds of businesses who are looking for someone just to take a project off their hands or become a freelance part of their team in an ongoing way. And gosh, I guess the Content Bite, it just rolls on, getting those guests, boosting your numbers, all of that is so exciting as well. So I suppose we should set actual strategic goals about all of that, but I'm more like the fly by the seat of your pants thing if you haven't already garnered that.
You are amongst friends here, most certainly with me. If I pulled back the curtain that's behind me and you saw my whiteboard.
I want to see that whiteboard.
Oh, it's a very poor excuse for a strategic plan. It's more so just got headlines and random ideas relative to each headline that perhaps I'll do one day in many, many different buckets. So
you're lying. I would totally love to hire you as a strategist, because you could just pull all my shit into line, basically.
Oh, a million ideas and just not enough time to implement them. But it's all about following that instinct. I think, so often I want to pull things into a beautiful plan and, step 1 to step 2 to step 3. But I think there is just so much magic in following an instinct and then allowing it to reveal itself. And, a strategically considered great idea that you just follow and don't over plan, that's my happy place. So I think there, if that's a place for the listener, if that's a place for you, I think we just got to go with it, right? Just pull the thread and let life reveal itself to you. Keep following your energy. It has been such a wonderful gift for you to share the inside of your business, the inside of your mind, and all of your story that you have shared with us today. And I can't thank you enough for it, because it is just an absolute gift for anyone at any stage in business to hear stories like this from people like you. So thank you so much for sharing your story with me today as a thank you, and in return to give back, because it's all about community and small business. How can the listener and I support you?
Well, you can check out Rachel's List at rachelslist.com.au. You can check out The Content Bite at thecontentbite.com. And you can, if you are in the content world or you want to know more about, writing, building a freelance business, content, all of that fun stuff, you can check out thecontentbitesummit.com.au. Was there anything I'm missing? lettertomyex.com. If you want really, kind of rude and sad and overwhelmingly depressing, a treasure trove of letters, overwhelmingly depressing letters, go to lettertomyex.com.
I will have all of the links in the show notes. So listen, you can go and click through it and find all this stuff. But do start with letters to my ex. And if anybody wants to find a really fantastic environment, very highly engaged audience, just absolutely enthralled with reading these letters to advertise to, hit Rachel up as well, because I spent hours on that website. I don't even know where my life went. But no, I will absolutely make sure to have the links there to all of those things. It has been such a gift to hear your story today, Rachel. Thank you for spending time with me.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.